Joining us now, Corey Lewandowski. He's at the embassy. I am in Wheeling, West Virginia. Great to have you with us, man.
John, it is great to be with you as always.
I know it's I love being in your studio there, but I do have to say, coming out to Wheeling, I've never seen this. You got to get out to West Virginia.
It's unbelievable, Corey.
I mean, this is, you talk about Trump country. You can't you can't buy a cup of coffee without five Trump signs.
Yeah, and welcome Vice President Mike Pence.
It's unbelievable. The enthusiasm.
John, your
for the
listeners
president.
don't know this, but I actually used to live just over the border in Ohio in Belmont County, 1 mile away from Wheeling, West Virginia. So I know the area very
He
well.
knows exactly where
I belonged to a gym in Wheeling for years. That is Trump country. Those are the people who are hard-working, great Americans who don't forget, John, it was West Virginia way back when George Bush ran against Al Gore, and the campaign slogan in West Virginia was, vote your gun, not your job, because Al Gore was so anti-gun, and they knew that they were going to take away the regulations and start closing steel mills and coal plants over there. And West Virginia helped deliver a big victory for Bush way back in 2000, and they were dominant in the Donald Trump election in 2016.
Oh, no question. I mean, he won West Virginia by so many. And that's why, I mean, even though the local polls right now, I got a bunch of them, they show Manchin up over Attorney General Morrissey, Joe Manchin, the incumbent, 7, 8, 9, 10, some have it. I think Morrissey's got a heck of a shot in this race, Corey. I really do. I think he's got a shot.
He does, and I'll tell you why. Because, look, Joe Manchin has had an opportunity to vote with the president's agenda, and specifically on the largest tax cut that our nation has ever implemented, and he voted against the people of West Virginia. And it's too bad, because Joe had the chance to take the West Virginia values that he has and bring them to Washington, and instead he was corrupted by the Chuck Schumers of the world and the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, and he walked in lockstep with the limousine liberals to vote against tax cuts for the people of West Virginia. And that's a shame, and the people of West Virginia will not forget that.
See, I think that's why Morrissey's going to win, and he's a better candidate than meets the eye. I mean, we had a chance to look at some of the things he's done, and you look at the primary. He was in a very contested primary.
With Evans. Evan Jenkins.
He had Jenkins was a really attractive, good candidate, and he clobbered him. So Morrissey's kind of one of those candidates that sneaks up on you. And look, you don't get elected attorney general multiple times of West Virginia without really knowing how to get this done. And I think when people meet him, they get to know him more and think about sending him to Washington. They're going to say, "Look, this is the guy we want there."
This was, I think, the lead attorney general in the state. He was part of a bunch of states that sued Obama, if I'm correct.
Right.
Good morning, Corey. This is Colonel Mike. How are you?
Colonel, I am doing great. Thank you for your service, and thanks for being on today.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's get to, Corey, let's get to some interesting things here. The Michael Cohen tapes. Now, you worked there, and you had interacted with Michael Cohen many, many times, Donald Trump's lawyer at the time. I never met him. I was never in his office, but I did have people tell me when I went to Trump Tower, John, if you ever go in his office, he tapes everything. I had people actually tell me that. Rubino told me that, I believe. So these tapes that are coming out, one comes out on CNN. There's supposed to be 12 more. Now they say there could be 100. You interacted with Michael Cohen many times. Is there anything at all to be concerned about with Cohen, Corey, or these tapes?
Well, I think the most concerning point, John, and it's very concerning, is you're having conversations with colleagues, and maybe some people would consider him a friend at some point, and is recording everything. And I understand the legality of it being allowed in the state of New York, but there's also an ethical question to it. Why would you feel the need to record conversations like that? I don't know anybody else who does that. I mean, there's clearly something going on there that needs to be addressed. So I can tell you this. The big story, obviously, is not that the president was recorded, but Michael Cohen also recorded conversations with journalists. And I think, John, that they are scared to death if Michael Cohen starts putting those out. We saw yesterday there was a story that Michael has a 2-hour conversation with Chris Cuomo on the recorder. I don't know what's on that conversation, but my guess would be there's probably some colorful language used by a couple people. And, I didn't see CNN today covering the fact that Chris Cuomo has a 2-hour conversation tape with Michael Cohen. Is this bias? Is this just, forgetful journalism? And I think what you're going to find is if Michael Cohen has all these tapes, many of these journalists have said things that if they come out are going to make them look very bad, very disappointing in the American people's eyes, and will probably cost some people their jobs. And it's amazing how the media isn't talking about that.
Well, it really is. So, and we're going to question that, I think, going forward, because, if they're going to release one tape about what the president may or may not have said in a conversation to his lawyer, you saw that tape, he was actually working and making decisions on some other things, somebody going to Charleston and things of that nature. One of his rallies, I think he was talking about, so he was just making decisions on it. But look, let's get that 2-hour release. Let's get, all these journalist tapes released. But I guess my question is, what on earth would Michael Cohen be talking to Chris Cuomo about for 2 hours? I get on CNN, I talked to him for 6.5 minutes. What could you possibly talk to for 2 hours? I mean, think about that.
It's a great question, and I think it goes to show the narrative where reporters, sometimes pretend to be one thing on screen and something very different off the television. And my guess is, and I don't know, Chris was probably using Michael as a source, getting information, trying to maybe set up an interview with then-candidate Trump. I don't know, but I am certain that, think about it, John. Private conversations, by definition, are usually private. And people say, hey, we're off the record all the time. And we've seen people get burned, whether it's Anthony Scaramucci or others. But what we haven't seen is, the reporters have any culpability in this. And my guess, I'm not making a statement against Chris Cuomo. My guess is Michael Cohen had conversations with network reporters, network executives, reporters across the spectrum from ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox, you name it. And if those come out, it's going to be very embarrassing for a lot of people.
Corey, Colonel Mike, I want to ask you a question. What do you think about the pick as Lanny Davis for his attorney?
Well, this clearly goes to show you that Michael wants to be very aggressive. He wants to go after Donald Trump. Lanny said that he is not seeking a pardon. And what it looks like, and look, I'm not an attorney, but from the evidence we have seen, there clearly seems to be an investigation into some type of Michael's finances. And, he's got some serious legal issues, and Lanny is a very capable individual who wants to go after the president and not talk about what the real issue is. And the real issue is this. There is not one person, not one individual, not even the haters on the mainstream media who said that what Donald Trump did was criminal, because it wasn't. There is no criminal intent. There was no criminal activity, but they want to spin this in the court of public opinion. And that's what this is about. And Michael wants to have his story in public opinion, because what Michael potentially has facing him, from what we've seen in the public documents, are criminal liabilities, and he wants to change that narrative.
Gotcha.
So, Corey Lewandowski, who is with us now, former Trump campaign manager. Hey, by the way, if you're listening to me now, you got to read Corey's book. It is such a great read. Let Trump Be Trump by Corey Lewandowski. Now, you can get it from Amazon, but if you don't like Amazon for whatever reason, that's fine. Get it at your favorite bookstore. Go to B. Dalton, wherever. But you got to get it. It is a great read. I read it 2 times, and the second time was even better because I started, like certain things I didn't remember the first time. I read it the second time. But it's a lot of fun, and it takes you through a ride of the whole Trump campaign with a lot of detail, a lot of interesting things in there. Corey pulls no punches in the book, him and David Bossie. It's a great read. Let Trump Be Trump by Corey Lewandowski. Buy it today. So, Corey, you were in multiple meetings, obviously, with Cohen. I mean, he was the lawyer. You were the campaign manager. I mean, you ran the show. Certainly when I was the chairman of Virginia, there was no doubt who was in charge of that campaign. You were great to work with, but you were the guy. So did you ever go in a meeting with him and talk about something and wonder to yourself, is this guy like getting me on tape? Did that ever go into your mind?
Well, John, I'll tell you, I grew up in a place where you got to learn to read people very quickly, because that's how you survive in Lowell, Massachusetts, on the street, right?
Yep.
And immediately I knew that I had some reservations, some concerns, and I was always, look, I never had anything to worry about because I never did anything illegal, okay?
Right.
But I also know that Michael wasn't going to be part of the campaign. And
Right.
so, I kept as much distance as I could from Michael because he worked for the Trump Organization, which was a completely separate entity, even though it was housed in the same giant Trump Tower, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was on the 26th floor. I was down on the 5th floor. So, we had multiple floors between us, and I just didn't interact with Michael a lot. And the reason was I wanted to keep as much distance from his role inside the Trump Organization and the campaign completely legally separate. For all those reasons, we had our own campaign legal counsel. His name was Don McGahn. He's now the White House counsel. And all of our legal issues would go through our campaign attorney and not through Michael.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. Corey Lewandowski with us. Corey, a couple more questions here because I know you're short on time. What did you think of the court ruling yesterday on the emoluments case rulings? A judge deciding not to stop that and let it go forward. What did you make of that?
John, it's amazing. It seems to be the first time in our nation's history that a federal judge has now determined what the founders of the Constitution have said. It has widely been interpreted in the past of referring to bribes, which makes common sense. But I think what you're going to see is that is very likely to be appealed, and another decision is going to come out. Because the bottom line is very simple. The President of the United States, who had enormous wealth prior to coming in, more wealth than probably all of the other presidents combined, was never going to think about this in the same way. Look, he doesn't care if a foreign official goes to his hotel and buys a cheeseburger. That is not influencing the president, right? That's not what is happening. And I understand what the premise of it was, but I think the judge probably erred on this one, and you'll probably see something change moving forward.
Let's get to the Freedom Caucus of the House. Mike Meadows, North Carolina, Jim Jordan, Ohio, filing impeachment papers on Rod Rosenstein. Is that going anywhere? And do you think that was a good move for them politically, yes or no?
Well, look, Mark and Jim are American patriots. They have been more than patient with the Department of Justice. They're a co-equal branch of the government, and they have every opportunity and legal responsibility to hold government officials in contempt of Congress and to have them removed if they are not answering the Congress's request in a timely fashion. And Rod Rosenstein and the Justice Department have continuously slow-walked this investigation, continuously tried to run out the clock. They are hoping, is my guess, that the Democrats will win back the House so they don't have to comply to the requests of this Republican-led Congress. And that is shameful, and I'm glad Mark and Jim are stepping forward because nobody is above the law, not the Deputy Attorney General or anybody else. And, John, if for 1 second the Democrats were doing this against the Republican Department of Justice, it would be the lead story on every single outlet in the planet. But because it's a Republican going after a Republican to get information that they're duly allowed to have, the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about it. That's
exactly it. I think you hit the nail on the head. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, 54 past the hour. We're with Corey Lewandowski. He is the campaign manager for the Trump for President campaign that engineered the greatest upset in the history of America, taking on 16 other Republicans, all big names, and winning the nomination. Nobody saw it. And Corey is now a senior advisor with the Great America Committee, that is the hard money political action committee for the vice president. You can get more information by going to greatamericacommittee.com, greatamericacommittee.com. And Corey, we're having you on today. We'll be with the vice president this afternoon in Wheeling, his big tax cut event for America First policies, the number one political action committee supporting President Trump's America First agenda. I got to tell you, the vice president has been a tireless worker in this effort. I mean, he's everywhere campaigning for the president. He's been very loyal. Now you're having a chance to work with him, Corey, one-on-one. What are your impressions?
Look, I am a huge fan of Vice President Pence. He was absolutely the right pick for candidate Trump to choose. I had the privilege of being part of that selection process as the chairman of the committee. He has been a steadfast supporter. He is a tireless worker. The Great America Committee, of which I'm part of, is raising money to make sure that we are giving it to candidates who are on the Trump-Pence agenda. Mike Pence was in 2 states earlier this week. He's in West Virginia today. He is on the road campaigning because he knows what happens if the Democrats take back the House of Representatives or gain seats in the U.S. Senate. And he knows it will stop an American First agenda. That's why he is out working so hard. He is one of the very best spokespersons for this administration. He and Donald Trump are carrying the Republican Party on their backs. Mm-hmm. You've seen that with the money that they have raised, and they are all in to make sure Republicans hold the Senate in November and keep the House.
What are the prospects? I got 2 minutes of your time, and I'm probably going to ask you this every single week because it updates. What are the chances now the Republicans maintain the House, in your judgment, Corey?
You know, John, I thought about this question yesterday, and I know I talked through some of the races last week with you. We've got 41 incumbents who are leaving, so those are some tough seats that we have to defend. And we've got a few opportunities for pickups, but not as many as the Democrats do. The good news is we've raised a lot of money. Kevin McCarthy is out raising money for his members. He's all over the place. The vice president and Kevin McCarthy from the House have a joint fundraising committee that they're out together to maintain that. I think if the election were held today, we have a 45% chance of keeping the House. But I think every day, John, the stock market goes up. People see the benefits of the Trump-Pence tax cuts. Every day that number gets better. But the numbers are against us. So it's about candidate recruitment. It's about turning out those Trump voters. And if you don't think the Trump-Pence team has coattails, go look at the Georgia election results last Tuesday.
We were going to ask you about that.
Where Donald Trump endorsed a candidate who was candidly down 8 to 9 points in that primary, and he won by almost 40. He won 69-30 in that primary because of the Trump-Pence agenda. That's why.
And I think Mike Pence endorsed him over the weekend, which was a shocker to some people. I'm from Atlanta. Obviously, I know the players. And then the president tweeting out that day, election day, tweets out an endorsement of Brian Kemp. And going into this runoff, I mean, Cagle was the overwhelming favorite. Overwhelming. I mean, nobody thought Kemp was going to be able to catch him. He started creeping up a bit, but the polls moved. Corey, it must have been 40 between Mike Pence's endorsement over the weekend and then the president on Tuesday. I mean, is that the most enormous number you've ever seen move in the polls ever?
Seeing Vice President Pence in Georgia making the endorsement and President Trump putting out a tweet and seeing the numbers move in such a way, it is unprecedented. Moving 40 points in an election in a 3-day span has never happened.
Never.
This is how strong the Trump-Pence team is and how important it is for candidates to embrace this administration, say that they are on our team and they are willing to work with the candidates who are supporting this administration. By doing that, they are winning time and time and time again. And by the way, John, you know this for sure. If Kemp would have lost, the media would be killing Trump-Pence right now. The endorsements don't matter. They've got no coattails, etc. He wins by 39 points, and there's no story from the media because it doesn't fit their narrative.
It doesn't, and just so everybody knows, Brian Kemp was an underdog the whole way. The polls had tightened, but going into the weekend, if you go to the Real Clear Politics poll, it was tied. Prior to that, Cagle was ahead by 8. Casey Cagle was the lieutenant governor of Georgia, Republican lieutenant governor, for 16 years. He beat Ralph Reed like 16 years ago in the primary. And so he'd been there 16 years. He had a ton of money, and he was a good guy. I mean, Cagle's a conservative. But I tell you, they came out for Kemp that weekend, and it went from Cagle up by 3 or 4 to Kemp winning by 40 points in 3 days. Never, ever seen it. Unbelievable.
Last question, Corey. What's going on with the wall?
Well, the wall has to get built. We are getting closer of getting money from Congress, but we have such weak leadership, right? The Democrats are obstacles. They're obstinate. They don't want to see it happen. If you go to any other country, right, they have rules and laws about who can come into your country, and we saw this today, are, the liberals, the leftists are so bad. What they're saying is the illegals who have come here illegally should now be paid for, right?
Yes,
and we should be paying them. Yeah. We have to build the wall is a promise.
We're going to build it with glass and
during
cement.
The campaign trail. It has to happen.
We'll build it with glass and cement.
We're out of time. That's going to be the final word. I want to thank Corey Lewandowski for being with us. Really appreciate him. Hey,
thank
buy
you.
Corey's book, man. You got to do it. It's
thank
so
you.
cool.
Corey, thank you.
Mike.
Thank you, guys.
I'm going to give Colonel Mike my copy, and then I'm going to buy another one so I can have a brand new one.
Is my sign? Is
Get
mine
Corey to
sign?
sign.
Okay.
Let Trump Beat Trump by Corey Lewandowski. You got to